Good afternoon. I hereby call this special meeting of the Nacogdoches NISD Board of Trustees to order. Let the record show that a quorum is present and notice of this meeting was legally posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. Board member that is unable to attend today's meeting. Please remember that items do not have to be taken in the order shown on the agenda, and please join us in turning your cell phones to silent mode. First item on today's agenda is public comment. We did not receive any requests to address the board as outlined in the meeting notice. If you're interested in addressing the board in public comment at a future meeting, please refer to the meeting notice and for instructions on how to sign up to do so. The next item, we do have one action item on today's agenda. We're going to move to that next, and that is item 3A, presentation of proposed final plan redistricting the school district's single-member trustee districts based on 2020 census data. And then you'll see item B there as well, the discussion of the proposed plan and any amendments necessary. So, Dr. Trujillo.
President Finch and Board, thank you so much. Of course, we've been working with Vicar staff with regards to the redistricting, and the attached resolution will formally adopt the amended single-member district boundaries. I move to adopt the resolution approving the illustrative plan presented in the redistrict of Nacogdoches ISD single-member district lines using the 2020 census data. The resolution, let's get to that. Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Nacogdoches Independent School District approving the redistricting of the district single-member district and the establishing new trustee district boundary lines for the trustee election based on the 2020 census and providing for the effective date. Whereas the results of the 2020 federal census have been considered and indicated that the Nacogdoches Independent School District single-member trustees district are sufficiently out of population balance to required redistricting in order to comply with the one-person, one-vote principle established by the U.S. Constitution. And whereas the district engaged the law firm of Bickerstaff, Heath, Delgado, Acosta, LLP to act as the district's redistricting consultant, including advising and assisting the Board of Trustees in preparation of a new redistricting plan in compliance with applicable requirements of the state and federal law. And whereas Section 11.053 of the Texas Education Code provides that the Board of Trustees of an independent school district that adopts the redistricting plan under Section 11.052 may provide for the trustees in office when the plan is adopted or the school district is redistricted to serve the remainder of their term in accordance with this section. And the board finds that there is a benefit to the operations of the district if the same trustees in office continue until their term expires. And whereas on October 21st, 2021, the board adopted redistricting criteria to assist the district and the public in developing redistricting plans which comply with the applicable federal and state laws, and adopted redistricting criteria were applied in the development of the district's new redistricting plan. And whereas on October 21st, 2021, the board also adopted redistricting guidelines regarding the submission of comments and proposed plans by the public to ensure the ability of the district to timely receive and adequately consider them. And whereas during the redistricting process, the district provided notice to the public of its proposed discussion and development of redistricting plan through meeting agendas posted in compliance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, notice on the district's website, and publication into the newspaper notices regarding public hearings. And whereas the board has considered the proposed redistricting plan of the board meeting on November 11, 2021 and December 9th, 2021, and at the public hearing held on December 9th, 2021 and January 5th, 2022 and January 6th, 2022, and considered any oral testimony, written comments, reports from the district redistricting consultant, and various proposed plans regarding the appropriate reconfiguration of the trustees district. And whereas the board finds that the attached trustees district redistricting plan is in the best interest of the citizens of the district, complies with the adopted redistricting criteria, and is believed to comply with the state and federal requirements. Now, therefore, Be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the Nacogdoches Independent School District that the existing single-member trustee district boundary lines for the district are hereby amended, and the new districting plan depicts on the map attached hereto on Exhibit A, defining new trustee districts. As such, new districts are further described in the tables attached hereto as Exhibit B, reporting population and demographic statistics for each such new district is hereby adopted and designed to define the district single-member trustees district from and after the effective date. The Exhibit A and Exhibit B are incorporated by reference in and made a part of the resolution and shall be kept in file the board's office. B, pursuant to Section 11.053 of the Texas Education Code, the trustees currently in office shall serve out the remainder of their term, and the term shall be filled as the staggered term of trustees then in office expires. C, that this resolution shall take and be given effective immediately, and that hereafter all district trustee actions shall be held under and in accordance with the new single-member district redistricting plan here adopted by the board until such time as the subsequent lawfully enacted in districting plan shall be adopted to replace this plan. Passed and approved by the board of the Nacogdoches Independent School District this 14th day of January 2022. President Finch and board, that is the report regarding the redistricting.
Thank you, I appreciate that. That satisfies the presentation of 3A, so we're going to move to 3B, the discussion of the proposed plan as presented by the superintendent and any amendments if necessary, and adoption if possible. So, any discussion regarding this? I might ask Dr. Trujillo, I know you had some public hearings on the proposed plans that we've reviewed in the last couple of weeks. Have you received any public comment that the board needs to?
No public comment was reported to me that impacted the decision that the board and Bickerstaff staff have presented. It was a pleasure sitting in with the city of Nacogdoches, with our city manager. They had their plan, we had our plan, we were prepared to have conversations, and we did have conversations with several community members that did come in and entertain the city as well as the school district's plan. So I want to thank Mario and the city staff for allowing us to come together to have a mutual meeting with our community.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We have, I do appreciate the city collaborating with us and holding those public meetings in conjunction with us. I think that was a really nice way to move through the process. Dr. Groman.
I just wanted to review, Dr. Groman, for those online, that when we started this process with Bickerstaff, they're very experienced. They did a really good job with the county commissioners and redistricting our county. And they basically said, we want contiguous, compact, and no significant changes in demographics as required by law. And basically, when I look at what they've done, and I've driven some of these boundary changes, I totally see what they've done, and I think they've done an excellent job. Not that I'm better qualified than anybody else, but I'm very concerned that I'm aware of what's happening. And we have to accept changes, and this is federally mandated, and we won't have to do this again for 10 years. And that's the good news. We do it, we're in agreement, and that's a good thing about this board is we get along, and we are always thinking this is for our school district, our community, and all of our students, teachers, and other workers. And so I think it's been well done, and we've gone through every hoop, and we want to thank all the people who participated in helping us get through those hoops.
Wonderful. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, I will open the floor for a motion.
I move to accept the presented resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Nerimond. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Reverend Irving. Any additional discussion or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Les, I'm going to pause for just a minute. At least, I don't know if any of you guys are hearing it, I'm getting just a little bit of feedback
Yes.
above us. It's just,
I can't eliminate it.
all right, all right, all right. Thank you for checking into that, I appreciate it. All right, now we're going to move to item 4, reports. Not to confuse what we just completed with the election boundaries, we are going to now hear a report on attendance zone boundaries from our demographer. Mr. Martin.
Hold on just a moment.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to circle this screen around so we can see the map in multiple ways. Hard copy, computer, and screen.
Wonderful. Okay, while they're getting Mr. Martin's joining us via Zoom today, while they're getting that board set up for us, I'll also call the board members' attention to page, I believe it starts on page 26 in your board book, where you can actually have a PDF version of these maps as well that you can kind of zoom in on and look with some additional detail. All right, I believe we're ready, Mr. Martin.
Here.
Oh, hold, we can't hear you. Hold on. Sorry.
What page is that?
All right, let's try again. Mr. Martin, would you say something?
Yes, ma'am. Testing.
Gotcha.
There you are.
Gotcha.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, President Fitch, members of the board, Dr. Trujillo. Again, we come back bringing the board some models of attendance zone boundaries. We'd like, if it pleases the chair, I would like to yield the floor to Mr. Trent Smith with Sonda Education.
Thank you.
All right, again, President Fitch, members of the board, Dr. Trujillo, great to see you. I wish it was in person, but unfortunately, due to everything, I think this was the more wise move. So I'm going to share my screen with you guys. And can you guys see my screen okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So I'm going to briefly go through kind of where we started, and then we'll go right into the maps. But a little bit of a reminder about how we do things, how we build our projections, and how we build our models. We start with the district map, and we draw some planning areas in there to kind of puzzle pieces of the entire district, and we'll see those in a minute when we get into the maps. Then we geocode the students to the parcels so that we know exactly where each one of these students is living, and it can help us decide, where are the cleanest available moves for when we start working with attendance zones. We look at, what are the trends in each one of those cohort groups, whether it be grade or, could be parts of town, different elementary schools. We look at all of those factors. We look at the housing trends in the district to see where growth potential lies. And then we look at mobility and birth rates, and also charter schools, as they have been more of a factor in recent years. And then we put together a 10-year enrollment projection for the district. And that helps us kind of see where we're moving on into the future. Then we take all of that data and we have it in our mapping software. And so we have layers of information that show us exactly where the current locations are, where the students are. It kind of helps us take a 30,000-foot view of how we can best help the district when we start working with attendance zones. And so we look at factors like we want to look at the enrollment balance of campuses. We want to minimize transportation requirements and costs. Consider options for those students who might be moving. Is there availability of grandfathering, and what the transportation would look like for that, if it's the student choice. Considering boundary impacts on for instructional programs, where that's one of the things that we're continuing to look at. We want to use natural boundaries as much as possible and keep neighborhood unity. We don't want to break up subdivisions if at all possible. We want to keep all those families that are living next door to each other going to the same schools together if possible. Then we want to have reasonable drive times. We want to maximize facility utilization. And then we want to consider the growth potential for each one of these campuses and what that might look like, and keep our commitment to the long-range planning. And as we moved into what we're doing specifically for your district, you know, these are some of the objectives that we had going into this project. We were closing Nettie Marshall and repurposing that property. We're converting Fredonia into a district-wide EE pre-K center. We're closing the current Carpenter location and opening a new one. And our commitment to those families was that they were not going to have to change schools during this transition. And so we're keeping all of those students within the Carpenter zone. We're converting Moses Middle School into Moses Elementary School to take up, you know, to kind of pull in those kids from, or have a space for the Marshall and Fredonia kids somewhere in the district. And then level out, you know, the remaining zones to allow some room for growth and program changes that might come to each one of those campuses. So those are kind of the factors that we started with in there, and that brought us into the maps that you have with you. We'll start with map 1. And I have these up on the PDF similar to what you have, and then I also have the software open in case there are any questions or comments that need to be, you know, want to get very specific. But our map 1, you know, the goal, again, keep Carpenter, keep all the kids in Carpenter that were in Carpenter before. We moved the location, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit here so we can kind of see exactly where we're talking about. But we wanted to maintain the Carpenter zone, back a little bit, and make sure that those families, you know, we made the commitment to keep them in their zone, and so that's what we did. In fact, the only change in Carpenter zone would be to add this small piece here. Because of the move of Carpenter from a more in-town location out to right across from McMichael Middle School on the loop, it made it really close to the kids that were right here in this little sliver that was formerly part of Rust. And so moving those kids allows them to just come right up this road and get on the loop and get right there to the school. And so that was one of the changes. That was the only change to Carpenter, was just adding a few students there. And then of course we closed, you know, the Fredonia location, and then we also, you know, for all intents and purposes, we closed Fredonia and Marshall. Fredonia becomes the pre-K center. And so all of those students, many of those students that were in Fredonia and in Marshall have ended up, several of those in Moses, and then some of those are now ending up in Rusk. And so this gives the, you know, all of those students a good place, a good location to go. Oops, there we go. And works in conjunction with transportation, you know, working with several of the members of the staff. We went through, you know, the transportation department. We also vetted it through the administrative teams. And so all of those things have been done. And we kind of came up with these 3 different maps, but overall, this first map has been our most popular. The second map, well, let me show you also what that looks like as far as with inside the school zones. And so looking at this first map, oh shoot, that's the wrong one.
Hey Trent, before you leave that map, we did have that adjustment that's over going to BQJ with Reggae.
Yes, there is an adjustment to Reggae. I'll move back to the map here. In fact, I'll just use the actual software here. It's going to be easier. So there is a section in Reggae that we moved in this first plan, and it is this section right off of Old Tyler Road. And it has kind of been a section that was kind of dug out of BQJ previously. And so these students all in this section, you can see the section that's outlined in red. The outlines, those red outlines represent the current attendant zones. So Reggae currently, you know, you can see it kind of in this pink kind of color. It currently comes out here and covers several of these locations here on Old Tyler Road. as well as, down a little farther into some of this section here that's almost off of Douglas Road. And so those kids are also it's a much easier route and much closer actually to BQJ than they are actually to Regay. And so we feel like this was a good move, and it allowed Regay some room to grow, as it is a section that has some potential growth out, especially out farther, a little out in the county. There seems to be quite a bit of growth happening out there. And so this would allow for that future growth to take place without having to change the map again in a few years due to that growth.
How many students would be affected in that section?
In that section, I believe it's, let's take a look at that. One second, I'll grab those students. So it's about 120 students that will be moved from Regay into BQJ.
Okay, thank you.
And so when we look at those numbers specifically, this map actually gives the best overall utilization leveling, and it gives some room in a few of these schools for some specific programs, and with Regay, it gives plenty of room to grow out there. This puts 426 K through 5 students in that campus with a capacity of 600. So all of your locations are below 80% utilization and above 60%. And so it's a nice, kind of level playing field across the district with some nice utilization numbers for each campus. So a few things about this particular table. This is, if we did this today, this is exactly what the number of students that would be in each one of these zones. And then looking out here, this ED represents economically disadvantaged, and this is the percent of economically disadvantaged out here. And the utilization represents the total number of students divided by the capacity. And so that's your utilization.
President Finch, important to consider as we're reviewing this is what Trent has is the actual residents, where they live, but where they attend based on transfers, he doesn't have access to that. So that number may deviate a little bit based on transfers and families that are coming from one school attendance zone to another. But to have it broken down to be fairly, when we did some of these adjustments and we were working collectively with Trent, I didn't see him do this, but you could literally see him kind of hopping around in his seat, because when you get between 60 and 80% utilization, that's a really good breakdown. So you can actually really evaluate programming, where you're going to put specific programs. You can also look at growth that may impact a specific campus as we're working through it. So
I think that growth is something that's really important, because if we do not have the facilities and the numbers, that could be a problem for us in the district. So I like that idea of that growth.
Yeah, I like the utilization numbers there. The economically disadvantaged, I'm a little uncomfortable with the spread there, but I don't know.
I was thinking the same thing. It just seems like we've got two schools that are just really
Outliers. Yeah.
Yes.
And I know that plays a factor into some of the other things that we have with learning and some of our other numbers. So how do you see that, Dr. Hill? Just curious. Can I ask?
No, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely, absolutely.
I put you on the spot. Sorry about that.
No. Can you hear me? Is it on?
I can't hear you.
I can't hear you.
Not on the mic.
I know he didn't test it before we came on. Mr. Linebarger?
That's a little better.
Can you hear me now?
Nope, gotcha.
Okay, wonderful. So yes, it does play a piece into our accountability because we always look at our percentage of ECD students. So yes, too, whenever I saw this particular graphic, the 70% stood out to me as the outlier from, with Regay. And then, of course, the, is it 92% at Mike Moses? So I'm at a little bit of a loss. I have been out sick, so I haven't been in on all of the discussions this week, so I hated to come in on the tail end on the discussions because I know a lot of work has been put into place. But yes, ma'am, as I was reviewing board book, I did see those two numbers that did stand out to me.
Dr. Truhill, I understood that we lose about 100 plus students from Regay, correct?
Yes, sir.
Are they make a difference on number of economically disadvantaged
It
balance?
does because of the location. If you think about the Regay zone typically grabs from center of town and it shoots straight out on Appleby Sand.
Right.
And so when you look at the layout of the economic standings of families in that range that we're shooting straight up, it does when you look at it. Now, the section that we did look at on the other, that's there, it's a horseshoe when you see where BQJ is at.
Right.
And it's a nestled community that's in that direction. Matter of fact, if you can orient yourself, it's basically where the Head Start program is.
Yes.
Here in town. It's across the street. We've got a trailer park that's there. And so you do have some students there that meet the criteria for economic disadvantage. So it does have some significant, when you're looking at it.
Yeah.
But Regay, just so we're fair in looking at it, Regay is already an anomaly when you look at it because of the fact of the way it lays out.
Yes.
And the one thing that we are aware of going into it is we do have this, that means the support that we're going to be able to provide is going to be targeted, much more refined possibly, but we're going to still provide the support. What's interesting though is I want us, when we're looking at accountability, you can have an economically disadvantaged number of 70% and still have a deficiency in instruction because you're not hitting growth.
True.
So across the board, when we're looking at all areas, we're looking at achievement,
Yes.
but you're also looking at growth when you're looking at to all of our families. But obviously, when you look at a number, a disparity between 70% and 80%, obviously there is going to be there is some educational needs. There's really with 70%, almost 71%. We did check a couple of other things. We did check with regards to nutrition services, that's having implications there. And our understanding, Lisa, with regards to nutrition services, no implications? No implications there, so we can continue to provide the support for our families in a variety of ways with the numbers that we have there. On the flip side, when you look at Mike Moses and you look at the trajectory,
Yes.
and you go and you follow it down through town and you head south, and that's the Fredonia Attendant Zone. And so when you're looking at the Fredonia Attendant Zone, when you're looking at the 90%, 92%, you also have a big population that goes all the way down to the south loop and down towards the south end of
Yes.
Nacogdoches. So that itself also causes that spread. When President Finch mentioned she was looking at the spread, from 92% to 70%, it's a big spread.
Yeah.
But you're also looking at what is and how and who are we servicing over at Mike Moses now, if this is the plan that we're going with.
Per the investigation, what section of the city or county expanding?
What city of the,
What region of a city becomes more populated in the future?
well, the growth that we're watching, and simply you can see it, is going to be happening. You've got several locations building up, going up through Appleby Sand.
Yes.
The growth that you have there. Of course, it just depends on families that move in.
Yes.
If they're single-family homes, but retirees, or what actually is being built there. It's not knowing that.
It would be interesting to hear the demographer's analysis of that too, because what I
Yes.
hear you saying, and you're correct, a lot of the new home growth is occurring on the northeast side, that does not account for necessarily all of the movement,
Yeah,
though.
exactly.
You could have a really fast-growing population in a different area, even though there's no new housing starts. Could we get his feedback on that from the way he's looked at the data, where we see our population shift or growth?
So currently, I'm going to follow Dr. Trujillo a little bit there. Currently, the most opportunity for growth is in that northeast section. And one thing I do want to point out that we discussed in one of our meetings also is that there is a possibility in the Reggae attendant zone, and I'm zooming in on that area now, that has right here in this particular side right off of North University that is zoned and already zoned, but is likely trying to put together a low-income apartment facility.
Yeah.
So that will affect that ED number as well.
Okay,
So
I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna pause you for just a second. And because we've not talked about that, Dr.
No.
Trujillo, would you catch us up as a board
Yes.
on the 4 applications that are
One of the things is, and I didn't want to be surprised, I did not want this to be a surprise to the board as we're planning this now. That would mean that in 2, 3 years, 4 years, if this were to go forward, then we would have to come in and figure out, okay, well, we don't have any room at Reggae, we didn't make any adjustments, and now we have to come back and revisit an attendance zone in order to make the space, because Reggae is really stacked up when it comes to the numbers we have currently. I'm
going to back up.
Yes,
I'm going to a little further from that, and that is the city has recently received 4 applications that we're aware of. You may have heard about this somewhat in the media, of companies that are interested in doing low-income housing apartment complex in the northeast section of the city. No permits have been issued or anything like that, but there are 4 companies that have indicated an interest in building, and I believe it's an 80 units.
Yes.
And so the timeliness of that, realizing that in speaking with the city, it's unlikely that all 4 would move forward, but there's a possibility that 1 could move forward. So what you could be looking at is an additional 80-unit apartment complex in that northeast district that could impact enrollment in that Reggae zone. Sorry. Go ahead. I just wanted to make sure everybody had that.
Yes, and
that
matter of
basic.
fact, so the reality when President Finch mentions there's 1, Trent, right there off of University, right there, see, in that area, there is a zone area, and it's zoned for exactly what this proposal is being presented to the city. Remember, the city hasn't gone out looking for this at all. These are entities across the state that are looking for opportunities to come in and build these units in the communities that we're having. There's 4 of them. Right there where the cursor is in that area, there is a piece of property there that is actually zoned and fits the criteria for what they are proposing, which means they basically can come in and start asking for a building permit and really start building the location, and that would be the 80 low-income units that are there. However, if he moves his cursor to the right a little bit, right behind the neighborhood, there's a piece of property there, and there's another piece of property right south. Those 2 pieces of property also have 2 separate individuals having a proposal coming in to build there as well. However, that would require a zone change. And so there's where it would have to go. The city would have to make a decision. Matter of fact, we are graciously extending that opportunity to the city to open up our high school auditorium so that they can have the public come in and give their feedback, because the city is not pursuing this. So they want to make sure they hear from the community. Those 2 sites that are there, are not zoned, so we don't know which direction the community will elect and allow those zones to go. However, that 80 unit that is zoned, if there's a possibility for that to happen and it's low income, that has implications with Reggae. We want to be proactive and figure out, okay, if it does happen, how do we adjust that? But also, how do we adjust with additional units? Dr. Groman, as you're driving out there, you know for a fact, right there on the right-hand side, they're cutting ground and they're building homes there. So we don't know if they're going to be family homes, but we've got to be prepared that those students will be coming there. Now, there's one more. If you'll go down Appleby Sand and go beyond Austin, right there. And if you go up just a little bit, and go up to the go up a little bit, Trent, just a little bit, just with the cursor. Right there to the left of the cursor, see that little slot of land, that little open area, but between that little the houses. The Catholic Church is across the street. That plot of land right there is also being pursued by an entity, and it's across the street from the Catholic Church, and they're looking for that piece of property. Once again, that piece of property requires a zone change, requires the community to come in and give their feedback. But notice, this is the Reggae zone again. So what we're looking at is the Reggae zone is a hot zone for these developers to come in and actually look at pieces and parcels of property in order to come in. And so as a board, one thing that I wanted to be very transparent with you is to say, what is the growth that we know of, and what are some growth that just came hot off the press. Trent didn't even have this as we were working through it, so we went back and gave this to him to let him know that there's some adjustments that are occurring there. So those are the four that President Fitch was talking about and what Trent was alluding to, and I appreciate the fact that we can go back and present that to the board.
Yes, and thank you, Trent. I'm sorry to have interrupted, but I wanted to make sure they had the foundation there of what you were referring to.
But I think if we're talking about the growth,
Yes.
in terms of the properties that are available, we don't know whether those will be single-family housing or low-income housing or senior living. So we really don't know that, but we have to anticipate the fact that we may have a growth in our school system with children that might move into that zone. Is that correct?
Always.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
That's why that column, when Trent mentions that column that talks about the distribution, and we're looking at it, it's between 60 and 80%, it allows for that unknown, that variability of not knowing what could come in. However, you keep a campus at 70, 80%, and you have that variability adjust, then all of a sudden we have to convene again to figure out, okay, how can we relieve the capacity, and we're pushing the capacity of a site, and there's where we have to make some adjustments. The other thing is when we made the commitment to building Carpenter, we did build it to be able to increase enrollment. We didn't just say solely Carpenter. We wanted Carpenter there, but we also, if we can pick up another group of a neighborhood, and we did, it's right there as well. So those are a couple of changes that are there, but to the point of the percentages, there are implications, so that just means we have to redirect and make sure we provide the adequate support to meet the academic challenges that will be there for our students. I hope I answered that. But, yeah.
Dr. Groman, for the Zoom people, I think that when I first got on the board, we were talking about redistricting for schools, and the can got kicked down the road because we said there's going to be too much turmoil and change of schools, and now we're here. So I think there's a lot of factors, but one factor we haven't discussed very much is the amount of time we put kids on buses to get them to a school. And the idea of the people right across the street from Carpenter can't go to Carpenter, and well, we can change a line, and now they can. So I think that's really wise because they don't have to ride across across the district. So there are a lot of advantages in taking those people and moving them and getting them into BQJ because that's close by. But again, this can all be coordinated through our transportation, but it's a matter of what's best for the students. what they do riding on that bus coming and going, it's just like feeding them. That's an important part of their day, and that's going to make them successful in their knowledge acquisition. So I think we have to be looking at all the things we're looking at, but we need to also look at some of these plans require people to be bused long distances that haven't been bused, they're basically across the city. So what the bottom line of this is, it's not just important what we're doing to everybody in our community, but it's critical that everybody in this community is a shareholder and shares with us what they think is best for our community and for their child and for the betterment of our community. We don't want to have to do this again in 5 years. We want to make this work as long as possible. We don't want a short-term solution. We want a long-term solution where every school and every child can be successful. So I think we have to use a lot of wisdom, but we need a lot of help. So basically, we need stakeholders, community members, parents, friends of ours of the Dragons. We need them all to give their part and their communication with us to know what they're thinking and how we can all work together on this. This is not our problem, us sitting up here. This is our problem, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Grumman. Before we move to the transportation issue for Plan 1, I want to put that on hold if we can. And I don't want to lose the first question we had in regard to Mr. Neramond and going back to Trent and saying, we've talked about the potential growth in that area that would impact Reggae. Trent, did you have any other areas that you see that we could see spikes or increases in enrollments?
So currently, looking at all the, what we know of as far as from the city, from the county, any of that type of housing information, developers that we interviewed, all those factors. Right now, there aren't any that I would say are significant, will have a significant impact on any of the other zones. Really, right now, Reggae is the one that is in the crosshairs of both single-family and, as we just discussed, multifamily opportunities as well. And so that seems to be the hot spot of the moment. Not that can change down the road, but currently, as far as developers looking at property, trying to clear land, purchase land, all of those factors, none of the other attendant zones at the moment have anything that's going to have a very high impact on any of those numbers.
Okay.
Madam President,
Yes, sir.
to respond to Dr. Groman, I think they considered transportation in advance. During the presentation, they told us that was one of the things they looked at. Also, my concern is between 70 and 92, there's a difference. So yeah, that's my concern. But my biggest concern is every student gets proper education. If that's our purpose, I guess that could be overlooked until something in the future happens.
And I guess what I'm hearing, to follow up with Mr. Nearmont, I think that is being looked at, is my understanding. Is that not correct? That we want to make sure that each student has the opportunity to get educated wherever they're going to be. Is that not our goal?
Absolutely it is. I think, and I think we're responding a little bit there to, I think anytime we see an outlier campus that has above 90% economically disadvantaged students, it's concerning because of the implications. I'm trying, I don't want to miss anything here, so I'm gonna put a button in that for just a second, guys, if you'll bear with me. And I want to go back now to Dr. Groman's question and have Dr. Trujillo on Plan 1, because that's the only one we're talking about right now. Can you address the question on transportation?
Absolutely. Matter of fact, our transportation director, I don't know if he's on with us at all this afternoon, but we had just a work session just with Trent and our transportation department, where we sat here and we looked at each one of these plans. And I will tell you, he was tickled to death, our transportation director, because you're truly running zone buses. where kids are staying within their zone. You're not crossing zones. You're not picking up kids and crossing different areas. So the time on transportation would be minimal when you're looking at the areas that you're having the zone as you're pulling the kids in there. That's was a plus. I know Michael, Mr. Martin, you are on?
Yes, sir, I am.
And Mr. Martin said had additional conversations with transportation, and did you hear anything extra with regards to our transportation director and the transportation services that we have?
No, sir, I'll just follow up on what you had already explained, is that they were very pleased. The router and Lincoln were both on the Trent, and they were very pleased that we were going to be able to actually keep the buses true to the zones and not be having our buses pass one another going from zone to zone. So this was a much more efficient model than what we're currently under in our attendance zone.
And to give you an example, Trent, down there in the bottom, I know Woden is right in there in our school district, but down there in the bottom, you see a little horseshoe, little peninsula. And when Trent was presenting this, we have families that get picked up, and he was talking about a real easy access for the buses to run and hook back around and jump in on that road and go straight up into the loop and be able to come around and hit to Mike Moses. So the minimizing the bus rides that students are having as they're going through the different routes that we do have here. Angelina River all the way down to the south and all the way up to Appleby Sand. It just blows me away. That's the stretch that we have. And so we have to do due diligence with our families to make sure that we're not grabbing and they're spending that much time on a bus because we have breakfast and we have all the different things that we want to provide, tutorials and all the things before and after school. Those are all things that we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to, and they have that community of knowing that that's their school, a school that we have for them.
So in this plan then, the transportation has been kind of combined to ensure that we don't have to bus kids from one zone to the other, top of the zone or to across town, so it makes it more feasible for them to get on the bus and get to school right away instead of having to wait for a long time to get to school.
With the areas that we had to adjust.
Okay.
Remember, we started off with Nettie and Fredonia and seeing exactly what that looks like from where those kids can go to school. Understanding that BQJ is already a large campus, and for them to come over and slide over to the left and go over to BQJ, what we were looking at is looking at Fredonia and Nettie and looking at Carpenter, figuring out how we can adjust those areas that are there. That's what you're looking at. And just for the board's sake, this is just map 1. And you'll see as he goes forward with the other maps that it does resolve some of that, but then it does create other dynamics as you're having the conversation. So to your point, Mr. Montoya, yes, looking at the Fredonia and the Nettie area, making sure we can expedite them and get the kids to the school without them having to sit for long periods of time. It's a benefit. You also notice TJR right there in the middle. They did pick up a group of kids that was a sliver in that little piece. So that allows us an opportunity to also look at kids in that area that can actually attend TJR as well. So it's every campus on this map, it has some sort of an implication. We took BQJ and took some little sliver. Do you see that little point there? It's that little, it's that weird to your left. Go down and to your left, Trent. That piece right there was taken, and now it goes to one campus, so it impacts 2 different buildings as you're looking at that. The same thing with Fredonia and the Nettie district that we have. You have implications up north with Reggae being implicated. So this one touches all the campuses, but at a minimal and maybe tightening up some areas where we have a little sliver, a neighborhood there that kind of doesn't attend the school that the other kids in that area are attending.
So let's address I know we probably have some Fredonia parents and some Nettie parents that are tuning in, and hopefully they can see a pretty good perspective of this map. But it appears to me that the majority of Fredonia is going to be at Mike Moses under this proposal, and the majority of Nettie would go to TJR. Is that a correct analysis on my
Yes,
part?
ma'am. If you see the red lines that are there, and once again, the red lines are existing today, school
Right.
area. So
Trent,
yes.
maybe you could zoom in on that a little bit and show us the red line that was Nettie.
So Nettie was, I believe, this area here, this line that covered quite a bit of downtown into where now this area here is Mike Moses.
Okay.
And then all the way down, let's see, what is that road there? Looks like Fredonia Street, South Fredonia Street. That all came down, and then there was this sliver here in the middle that was BQR.
BQG.
And, that was kind of an odd looking on the map, but I'm sure at some point there was reasoning behind that. But so this area here that is now going to Rust was the area that was
Nettie. Okay, and kind of go through that same process with Fredonia.
And so Fredonia, you can see here's the location. I left it on there so you can see where the pre-K center will be. So Fredonia outlines that small little section around it and then came all the way south. So it was the other line that kind of took into Moses. But part of that part that's closest in is going to now be going to Rusk. And then the rest of that location is all headed to Moses.
Okay.
And it comes down all the way to the south edge, and then came up here to this section here. And then this section was a discontiguous section of Rusk that would now be going to Moses.
Okay. All right. All right, so I know that Trent has 3 plans that he needs to show us today. This was Plan 1. I want to hear from Reverend because we haven't heard any comments from him. So I want to hear your comments on Plan 1 before we move on. But then realize as we move on, we will come back to this as well and discuss it more. So we're not necessarily leaving. Reverend?
My thoughts are, in listening to the projected plan to add low-income housing, that it's not just going to affect Brigade. I think it's going to have an impact district-wide because the traditional trend, whenever there are new low-income housing, it doesn't necessarily draw in new citizens to our town, but people in other areas migrate to that part of town. And so I think it's going to have an impact on every school in the district. So I think we need to consider that as well. Not just if the numbers are going to go up at Brigade, they're going to go down somewhere else.
That's a very good point.
So,
Very good point. All right. All right. Thank you, Reverend. Any additional thoughts or comments?
no, we can just
Move on.
continue to look at it.
Okay.
You know.
President Finch, before he moves on, I just want to make sure that everybody understands that this one, we made a commitment, Carpenter stays intact. And this one kept what this board and the commitment we had as we were moving forward is that Carpenter stays intact. So just want to make sure that we keep that in mind as we are having the conversation and moving forward. Thank you.
I think that's real crucial, because that commitment that we made to keep Carpenter intact, if the other plans, I don't know what they are, but if they're not, then to me, I mean, our commitment has to stand with Carpenter. And that's just my comment.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at Plan 2.
Okay. So Plan Plan 2 was my attempt to move as few as possible, but kind of make room as Moses comes into play. Obviously, it does require some long bus rides for some of the Moses crew in this particular plan. And as Moses is pretty spread out, it moves the pinwheel around, shifts around. Rusk stays pretty much the same, but it did influence some of Carpenter, and that was really an attempt to just keep the Moses map, the Moses attendance zone contiguous. There's only about 7 kids along, that would be moved out of this area from Carpenter into Moses. But again, it does not meet the criteria of keeping all of Carpenter where it's at. It did pull in some of these kids down here on the south side, as they would have, relatively easy access to come up and hit the loop, pretty quickly and get into the new Carpenter Elementary. And then also, it would keep these students here that we moved into BQJ. It would keep them in Reggae for, at this time. And then looking at the numbers for that particular plan, and transportation was not very high on this plan as well. It wasn't their favorite, but the utilization did get Reggae up. It keeps Reggae up very high at 80% compared to the other areas, and Moses at 81%. And then, but it does speak to a little bit of the economically disadvantaged, brings those numbers a little more in line.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I do want to point out as well, before we go a whole lot further into this, there are some other programs like dual language. Some of those programs will also have an effect as to what location those are at. Will also have a pretty significant effect on that economically disadvantaged number as well.
Yeah, the numbers, that thought did cross my mind when we were looking at your previous presentation of, that's assuming that everybody that is in that attendance zone would go to school in that attendance zone. And correct? It's not taking into consideration programs or transfers.
That is correct. Because we were dropping out campuses completely, it was much more accurate look to go with where these kids live versus where they were attending, and because it would have thrown some of those numbers way off by trying to place all of those attending kids into a different campus. We would have to really wade through and been very specific to some of those programs. I know, are still flexible, as there's room at all these schools for these programs. So that some of that discussion is still up for decision making.
Sure.
It just flipped Moses and Reggae on the economically disadvantaged.
He's right, it evens those numbers out a little bit.
Well, I mean,
but
you've got 90 to 77, so you still have a disparity.
there's still a
that's-
disparity, but it's just not as great.
Right.
Yeah. The thing though, that's that district going all the way from one side to the other side of town, that seems like that would be a transportation nightmare. Would you speak to that?
Yes, matter of fact, Trent is absolutely correct. When we had transportation talking about this one, he did not care for this one at all. It talked for, we would have bus, and like right now, bus rides, 6:15, it's dark.
Yeah.
That means kids are getting home, and it's after dark, and we want to make sure we can get them pretty close to get there. The other thing you're looking at is, this board about 5-6 years ago had a conversation with regards to a Reggae, and we're circling right back to that same area, which is on that top sector. When you see at the very top, go up one more section, that one up there, that is being pulled away from Reggae. And so that now goes to Mike Moses, which is a brand new building, but still you have a travel time on buses for them to make their way down and go around to the loop to get them there. What he did not like was this is cross-district. You're going to have a lot of of kids that are on buses to make the trek across the attendance zones that we have.
Well, and it does not keep Carpenter intact.
No, it does not. Although it's 7 families, that was not our commitment when we were talking to the families about Carpenter. And there are families that may be in that area. To Reverend's point, and we noticed that, and I don't want to mix it, but we noticed that in the redistricting conversation for boards. It wasn't the fact that we had new bodies, it was the movement of population. And that's one thing we do have, and Reverend is right on when he says, if, let's say, that housing complex gets built, it does move kids possibly from an area that they're at, and parents want to move into another place, they may move to north of town into that unit, which has implications for numbers. So it's right on with regards to movement of families, not necessarily new ones. But transportation, absolutely, they did not care for this plan at all because of the fact that kids are on buses for, and that's not just one area, it's multiple areas for a significant amount of time.
Well, that's definitely a move away from what I would, it's not a neighborhood concept,
No,
you
it's
know.
not.
Any other thoughts
Well, I just
before we?
think even in this one, moving those kids from one side to the other is gonna cause some financial impact in terms of running buses and fuel and things like that we need to consider.
Not only that, just the fact the kids in the bus so long,
Yeah,
so late.
yeah, I don't think that's a good thing.
Now, notice, we did take that section up there from Reggae. And when you're looking at economically disadvantaged, you're not going to gain anything by removing that. The percentages are still spread. The fact of the matter is, when you draw that line and you draw that map and you shoot it out Appleby Sand, just the nature of the families that are there is what's going to keep that number where it's sitting at. But I want to also stress, even though we're looking at all this, the amount of support. That's why, as a board, when we have questions and Dr. Hill's presenting, and we have resources, and we ask, and it's great, we ask great questions as a board as to why are we spending this over at this building? It's because of that number. That number requires us to pay close attention to the economic needs of our kids to make sure they're providing all the services that they need to have. And sometimes that requires more resources, more staffing, more programming. Doesn't make the job any easier at all. And so, but it's still, that's the direction that you're looking for when you're looking at the support, when we're drawing the lines.
Well, that's a good point, and that comes down to classroom size as
Yes,
well. And, you
absolutely.
know, that's,
Oh, yes.
I'm sorry, I bring it up every time I get a chance, and that is,
Yeah.
I agree.
and particularly, you know, on a campus that if there's higher needs, then our classroom sizes should be considered and reduced. All right. Any other thoughts before we move to
Yeah, I just
Plan
had a
3?
brilliant thought. Well, maybe it wasn't brilliant, but it was thought. When we're talking about all this, we're basically going from 5 elementaries to 4, right? Isn't that what's happening?
Yeah.
And so we are going to need to consolidate all the people that we have with special skills from Fredonia and Nettie into Moses, or however we mix them into the whole mixture. And actually, this helps us to enrich the necessary specialist, and it's going to add to the numbers in most of the schools or all of the schools. So instead of looking this as like maybe something difficult or not positive, I think this is a very positive thing, because number one, we want to try to keep every teacher, worker, everybody, we want to get them from where they are to where we want to a new place. And we're going to be having to add a lot of people over at McMichael. And so I think it's very exciting times, and I think that not only our public, the shareholders have to be patient, but we need to have all the people that are involved in all this to be trustful and say, we want to do the best we can for you too, because you are really important. Our students are important, but you are important just as much as they are, because if you're not with us, then we can't educate those kids. So I think it's a great challenge or opportunity that we have to consider that in this going from 5 to 4. And remember, we still have one elementary school in the top 25% of all Texas elementary schools. That's Rusk. And Ms. Harshbarger, we appreciate everybody and their hard work. Everybody works hard, but they have some visual approval of that. We're proud of them, but we're proud of every school, every teacher, every administrator, every student that's working hard to progress.
Our number of schools are not decreasing. We still have 5 elementary schools. Is that right?
Yes, we'll become the pre-K center. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Pre-K center, is pre-K center classified as an elementary school?
It is, yes, sir.
All right. All right, any other thoughts before we move to Plan 3?
So
All
it'd
right,
be 5 plus the pre-K center.
No, 5 would include the pre-K center.
Yeah, the only one coming offline would be Nettie.
Fredonia is not on the list.
What's that? I didn't hear.
Fredonia's not on the list,
No,
you
we
mean?
got Brooks, Jones, Carpenter, Moses,
It's on
Regain,
the other
West.
2 maps.
Fredonia would be converted into pre-K.
Into a pre-K, so that's 5.
Yeah.
Plus the pre-K.
Yeah. So I was wrong. We've got 5, but one of them's specialized.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
two
in
middle
the
schools
long
will go to
run,
one.
when we look at the long run right now, Nettie is just gonna be used for a year to hold the pre-K center until Fredonia is done. Once Fredonia is done, then we're gonna take all the pre-K and move them over to, from Nettie to Fredonia. Nettie will come offline completely. And that would keep us to the 5 campuses, one being a pre-K center.
Which one?
Fredonia becoming the pre-K
That's what
center.
okay, when you look at the report, Fredonia is not on the list. You have Brooks, Glenn, Jones, Carpenter, Moses, Regay, and TJR.
Yes,
That's 5 elementary schools. Plus Fredonia, which will be a specialty, pre-K, that would be 6, if my math is serving me right.
1, 2, 3. If you look at, we have the 5 zones.
That's on page 27.
1, 2, 3, 4.
So we're not losing the school, in fact, we're adding. So I think it's good.
All right, Trent, and will you walk us through Plan 3?
Absolutely. So Plan 3 was my best attempt at, okay, so if we were to, not worry about Carpenter, the commitment there, and really just look at the locations and try to do a map that is very neighborhood oriented or where kind of started over, right? Where we just erased all the lines and started over. That was my attempt. This is my attempt at that. Kind of trying to utilize the locations as best as possible. Obviously, again, I took out any commitment to keeping certain students at certain places. And so this is the attempt at that. It looks really pretty on the map. Again, takes into some of that consideration, but it does not, keep the commitment of Carpenter at all. And as far as utilization goes, Carpenter's still, up at 85%, basically. Rusk would be at 84%. And then you have, Regay, who would have the least amount of utilization. And so it would open it up for programs and such. And then as far as ED, you're still looking at pretty similar, changes there, one at 90%, one at 77, but a little bit better off. But then looking at the map, this would be moving a tremendous amount of students from where they're at into new locations.
This would be the most disruptive.
This would be the most disruptive.
Yeah, you're just starting with a clean slate.
Actually, this is, a lot of times when demographers would give you a plan that says which one makes the most sense based on proximity to the school. And however, the room got real quiet with the various folks as we were presenting this. You'll see that the reggae is just being dismantled when you're looking at this particular plan. You're also looking at Carpenter, redoing our commitment to Carpenter. Matter of fact, when we did this number, if I'm recalling, we were not holding our commitment to over 200 Carpenter families. Correct, Trent?
Yeah, something very similar to that.
Yeah, it was a large number when we were looking at that with this particular plan. However, when you look at the percentages, and notice that 70% is still looming, that 70-something% is still looming. It's because it's, what do you do with that one section of town that really changes the dynamics of the percentages as we're looking at the campuses. And so.
Hey, can you pull that screen back up for us? Yeah. So your differences are still there,
Yeah.
and your utilization is all over the place. And
It moved from Moses to Carpenter, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did.
That ED population.
while I appreciate what you were attempting to do here,
I mean,
the
it
fact
looks
of the
good on
nature that
paper.
it's so incredibly disruptive doesn't make me rest easy on this one.
Yeah,
I agree. I think it's least desirable.
Of most of the people I've shown this to.
Yeah,
Madam President, may I make a comment?
yeah, absolutely.
As look at the transportation and keeping commitment to the Carpenter people, and knowing the fact our intention is an education for all our students, my thought is plan number one was more.
I agree. That's a wonderful segue, I think, into what I need to say is our goal here today is to look at these and kind of say, we're comfortable, let's use Mr. Nerman's, we're comfortable with Plan 1, and what that would look like from here is we could give direction to Dr. Trujillo to do a couple of things, and that might be any tweaks that we would like to see on it. But then most importantly, to go out into the community and start sharing that plan with the community to gain input and what tweaks and what ideas the community would have.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think one of the key components would be to narrow the gap in the economic disadvantage between the economic disadvantaged campuses. I think that would be one of the tweaks.
Yeah.
All right.
Let me back up and say, I for one, absolutely agree with Mr. Nerman that I am most comfortable with Plan 1. Can we kind of
Absolutely.
hear from some of you other?
I think it makes sense, Plan 1. Plan 3, if we're going to present any plans to the community, I would be recommending that we do 1 and 2 and eliminate 3, because it just doesn't seem like something that we want to go down the road. That's just my thought.
But you're most comfortable with Plan 1?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Reverend?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Mrs. Winslow?
Yeah, so like Plan 2, the problem I was having with it, and somewhat Plan 1, is that you're stringing kids so far up and down in the middle. On Plan 1, you're only doing that to BQJ, really. But they're all on one side of town. I would have to go with Plan 1. Plan 3, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, yes, everything's in a pie. It looked even on the paper. But when you look at the numbers and you look at kind of where it all sits, it does not make sense to me at all. Plan 3 is completely out. So I would have to put on my
my money on Plan 1 at this point.
Dr. Groman?
There are no half-truths. We promised, are we going to keep our promise to Carpenter and all those families and those children? They have waited for the joy of walking into that room. Those teachers cry thinking about it. I think that it would be the most destructive thing we could do to consider anything that left one family out of the circle. Because that one person, we broke our promise. So I think we must have Carpenter intact and everything else to the best for every other student. And that, we keep our word. And if Plan 1 fulfills that, then that's the one I support.
Okay. I'm going to come right back and agree with Reverend on if we can use Plan 1 as the basis, is there a way? And realizing there might not be, but is there a way that we can bridge that disparity on the economically disadvantaged a little bit more? You know, is that a tweak that can be made? I don't know that he's got the information today, but in that, I would also like to see the breakdowns in populations at the campuses. For me personally, I would not want to see us create an uneven disparity within our populations as well. My personal goal would be to see it reflect our community as much as possible on every campus.
Absolutely. Trent, can you put map 1 up for us again? One of the things that I can address, I'm going to address what President Finch brought up. One of the things that we make a very open to all of our parents in our community is that transfer opportunity, and that's going to stand firm. We have families actually right now, as they're watching this, that they reside within one of these areas, but their child does not attend that area. Meeting the guidelines and the expectations when it comes to transfers and doing what we have, we're going to continue to honor those transfers for families that want to attend. My goal is not to have one campus that is recognized at the state level. I want every one of our campuses to be recognized at the state level. I want every one of our campuses to be one that the parents are saying, this is my school, I'm proud of it, and I'm going to be here. And we're working on getting that for every one of our schools. And so we want to make sure, first and foremost, transfers are going to be there. The other thing that we've got to pay close attention to is programs. And trust me, we're looking at these numbers, but when we're looking at these numbers, there's specific programming that has a tendency to skew this if we don't place them in the right place. And so we alluded to that just a while ago briefly, but it is a fact that if we do address the programming, which just looking at the nature of the map, most of the students that are receiving one-on-one instruction with regards to the two-way program that we have with the bilingual program is where would that program live? And that's something that I would continue to work with Dr. Hill and our departments and also with our campuses. And we would have to make sure that when we're looking at that, where could that program live so that we can do amazing things with the students that are in there. That has implications because most of those students, and that's what transportation was excited about, is when we start looking, and transportation's in that dialogue, when we start looking at those programmings, if most of our bilingual kids are living in the blue and the green area down there, which is where they are at anyway, so when we take those kids out and we strategically place them on a campus, what would those numbers do with regards to the disparity that we've noticed? So programming is going to be something that's it's going to allow us to be very, very specific in addressing that need.
Is there a way to overlay that? I know what he is working right now with is kind of the raw data. Is there a way that staff can work to kind of, it won't be exact, but to give us an idea of what those numbers are going to look like considering the programs and considering the transfers?
I will have to look into that, but
Okay.
if data is living somewhere out there, all we have to do is get this information from Trent and then be able to get it from another department. I wouldn't put this to Trent. I would say that our staff can come in
Yeah,
here and
I
say,
agree.
what does that look like? And that is as we move forward, so that when the board selects a map, you know that we've done our due diligence to do the very best. Whatever we arrive with, people are not going to be happy, and some are going to be elated. So we want to make sure we get somewhere where we can really address the majority of our parents and our kids, primarily meeting the needs of every one of our kids.
I'd be curious to see what, if any, impact that would have, because my perception is, and this goes back to what Reverend is saying, is when you bring on a new apartment complex, children are moving. It's not necessarily new families. Well, that's true for transfers as well, and I know that, at least I have a perception, that at TJR and at Regay, that we are absolutely full at both of those campuses because of transfers in. So that's gonna shift numbers a little bit. So it'd be interesting to see what impact,
Especially when we look at
if
program.
it's statistically relevant. Yeah.
Exactly, especially if we look at programming, because if we make a
Yeah.
programming shift, how many of your transfers can you accept? So that we
Exactly.
want to make sure that we keep the sizes manageable. We also want to make sure that we're looking at class sizes. Just because it's a school popular doesn't mean that we fill the classrooms up to capacity without having the space that's in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'd like to see the integrity of the program stay intact
Yes.
rather than diluted. Because that's, like for the bilingual program, it's very important that we stay intact with that and continue to grow it. So,
Oh, yes.
Madam President, could we request the same material, these numbers on Plan 2? So we would have it for us to look at, and that way when people ask us, we'll have those numbers in our hand.
Okay, so what I hear there is a request to possibly move forward with both plans?
Well, I just thought that when people ask us, that we could say, this is how it differs. Because I'm not particularly interested in progressing in Plan 2. I'm looking at how we can understand 1 better. But I think it's good if we have that information on 2 to say, this is one of the reasons why this is better than that.
Okay, I would challenge us there. I don't necessarily want us to, unless we're seriously considering Plan 2, I would hate to invest any more time in it.
yeah,
I
I
agree.
think, and then I think that comes to the point that you will be presenting those plans to the community. My preference
Well,
would be is that.
we're directing to present Plan 1 to the community to
Right.
get feedback.
And so if he's gonna be doing that, my preference would be is that he gives that explanation to families and stuff, because I don't think that we should jump the gun as board members to give information that may not be accurate. So that's just my opinion.
Good.
I'll be happy to visit
Totally
and,
happy, totally happy.
Okay, you're comfortable with that
Totally
approach?
comfortable.
Okay.
This is a good plan. We need to look at how we can make this fly and work for everybody.
Invest our energy into trying to make Plan 1 the best it can be. It would be my approach there.
Sometimes when you put too many options, the people who are not as informed, they become confused, and all of a sudden they form their own thoughts. So if you have one put in front of them and say, we justified that, we studied it, and we came to this conclusion, probably would be best.
Absolutely. Mindy, are you comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable.
All right. I'm hearing that Mr. Nuramon's comfortable, Mr. Montoya, and Reverend Irvin. All right. All right. Any further questions or direction needed from us today to help you guys get started on the next steps?
no, ma'am, I will be working with, and just to tell you the timeline is what I'm looking at, is I wanted to make sure to put this before the board so that I can go ahead and get the direction, and my plan is in February, is go ahead and start getting an opportunity to go out into the community in a variety of settings and campuses and sit down and hear what the community says about the plan that the board has put before them. I will be happy to have an engaging conversation and dialogue with our community regarding any question they may have about the areas that are there. Programming, I'm going to continue to work through the departments to give me, because honestly, initially, when we first started this, Dr. Salceda came in, we had a meeting, and we talked about the bilingual program, and she gave me kind of a scatter plot of where all the students were in the community. I didn't arrive with blue and green on my own. When I saw the dots, that's where the kids are at. And so when we start looking at students that are receiving services, I'm going to work on so that when we start looking at what is best for the programming and how does that have implications with our economically disadvantaged numbers, we can overlay those and you actually see how the numbers can tighten up a little bit as we're moving through. I'm going to tell you with the reggae area, I wish I could do something with the numbers, but we have to understand the nature, just like the blue-green is down there with the bilingual services. Naturally, that top section is where you're going to deal with much more of the upper socioeconomic, and with that has the implications. What I'm concerned with, and this is why I want to make it the best program, is when I go in there and take a drive out there in that reggae area, I got families, and I'm talking to them, that actually picked another community to go to school in. I want them back in Nacogdoches. I want to make sure that we can get them the best campus that we can get them and have them here with us. So what I don't want is to do something where we wind up losing kids, and what can we do to refine that to get the kids to come back? So we're going to address it, all of them. So,
I agree.
yes.
And thank you, and I want to encourage for those listening out there, and hopefully maybe even staff, when we get to the point where we're taking this out and seeking public comment, I really want to be as proactive as possible. I don't know if that's reaching out to the chamber to try to help promote it through the chamber as well, through the city, any way that we can to try to get engagement in this process.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Any additional comments before we move on?
No, ma'am.
This was a biggie. All right. Dr. Groban.
May we have a brief recess for
Absolutely.
convenience?
Absolutely. Let's see. I show it's about 1:25 right now. Why don't we take a brief recess for 10 minutes?
Thank you, Trent, very much, sir. Stay safe, sir. Stay safe.
Butcher Boy's burger for me.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Not seriously.
Okay. We will reconvene from our recess there, and we will now move to item 5 on our report. This is an agenda review of our meeting that will be held next week. So let me double check myself, but there is no additional action that will be taken today. These will all be for discussion only. So item 5A is a review of the board meeting minutes. Did anyone have any comments or corrections regarding the minutes? Right, hearing none, we'll move to item 5B, business office reports. Mrs. Barbrett.
Good afternoon, President Fitch, board members, Dr. Trujillo. I'd like to begin with the budget amendments, which are on page 41. Budget Amendment A is moving funds for bilingual education from instruction to professional development. And item B is budget funds received for athletic facility use, so revenue, and then the associated expenses with that.
That might be the fewest budget amendments we've ever had.
That's
pretty awesome.
I like it when that happens.
Yes.
But then next month, we'll probably be full of them.
Catch up for it.
Any questions on budget amendments? All right. Next, we can discuss donations. And they are found on page 46. These are donations under $2,500. A donation of $27.53 for school supplies from Kroger for Nettie Marshall. A donation of $1,500 for a teacher and staff Christmas party from the Mike Moses PTA for Mike Moses. A donation of $500 for the high school from ICF International. And then a donation of food and food cards from various vendors, El Shamal Bakery, Chick-fil-A, Whataburger, Raising Cane's, McDonald's. Well, there's Roscas de Reyes and La Mexicana grocery store, and the same thing for the bilingual and ESL program. Any questions on donations? Next, I'd like to discuss the investment report, and it can be found on page 48. And actually, we saw a minuscule rise in what we earned, but it's still pretty dismal. Our certificates of deposits, I have been letting those expire, and we've received some of that money back, but just recently we had one expire, and it looked like we had a little bit higher interest rate on a 6-month term, and so I reinvested that, but I mean, you don't see that in this. That would show up next month.
So we finally made a little bit.
A teeny weeny bit.
It's better than nothing.
Yes, it is. So any questions on the investment report? All right, now I'll entertain any other questions you may have on the other reports.
Any additional questions on the business office reports?
No, ma'am.
Right, hearing none, we will move to item C, Proclamation 2022 list of instructional materials adopted by the State Board of Education. Dr. Hill.
Thank you, President Fitch, members of the board, and Superintendent Trujillo. This is kind of an annual approval for us. The subjects change every year depending upon what the state puts before us. Proclamation 2022 specifically deals with health education and physical education. So the list that you have in front of you is the list that the State Board of Education has adopted. They just released it in November. However, all you're doing today is you're not committing us to this vendor. We just always like to put it before you ahead of us meeting with the campuses, the teachers that are going to be involved in instructing this, as well as putting it in front of the DAC. So today doesn't commit us to anything other than you guys are just saying, okay, if this is the vendor you guys go with, we're okay with it. As you well know, there's a process that we meet with all of our committees. We'll bring it back to you, of course, if the expenditure is over $25,000. So I just wanted to let you guys see the list. And it's only one vendor this year, which I find is extremely curious.
That was going to be my next question
Yes,
was,
it's the same publisher, so.
this is the only vendor the state board adopted?
Yes, ma'am.
That
I
is,
don't know the
find that
rationale for
a
that,
little-
but it is very curious.
Yeah.
I've never seen this in my career, so.
So that's a very narrow, you don't really, that's a little mind-boggling.
Would have to agree with you, yes, ma'am. We
Yeah.
are living in some very interesting times, not only with COVID, but also with this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely. And literally, for the viewers out there that haven't seen this, literally, they've given us one option for each grade for health education and one option for physical education.
And President Fitch, just because, the SBOE has approved it and just because you guys approve it, it doesn't mean that we always have to go with this. There are some other vendors that we can go with and use our instructional materials allotment, but we just
Okay.
always like to put this in front of you guys to say,
Okay.
hey, this is going to be an option for us as we move forward.
Okay.
Dr. Hill,
Sir,
is this still practice if a student, let's say, is regularly participate in some, let's say, karate classes or Olympian training would be exempt from physical education?
yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Any additional questions or comments on this item? Okay, that'll take us to item D, consideration of Nacogdoches High School 2022-2023 course catalog, including new courses offered for high school credit. Dr. Hill.
Perfect. Thank you, Madam President. So very pleased to present to you the 22-23 NHS Course Catalog. A lot of work, manpower's been into it, put into it. Miss Claire Bray did a phenomenal job. Mr. Autry, of course, with the help of because we have some fine arts editions, Paulette Tomlinson, Jacob Lusk for CTE. So your course guide begins on page 112. For the most part, it is the same. There were just some formatting issues that we took care of to make it a little cleaner, per se. But then specifically for this item on page 210, there are 12 new courses that we want to put before you. So you'll see it's a smattering of CTE courses as well as fine arts. So some of those, for example, you've got a new business English course. One thing to note here is
Give me that page number again.
of course, it's 210, I
Oh,
believe.
thank you.
If I did that correctly. Yes, ma'am. The business English is the first one. That is a CTE course. One thing to note about it is that it can also count for those students who are on the Foundation High School program. It will satisfy their English 4 credit requirement. So we think that's a good addition. As you look on down, you've got some Art 2 sculpture classes, Fine Arts Dance 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then on the following page, you've got some practicum courses that we're adding in agriculture, animal science, applied ag, engineering, graphic design and illustration. So it's some wonderful advantages and opportunities for our students. We wanted to put this before you sooner rather than later because our counselors are starting the process of meeting with our students as they're beginning to think about their high school career from 8th grade, entering into 9th grade. So I entertain any questions or thoughts you may have.
I have a question. The hard copies of these are at the high school, or how do people get the catalog?
So when we met previously, I know Mr. Autry was pretty firm on getting these in the hands of people. I think in the past we've just published a PDF online. We've not actually printed them, but I know he is in agreement of getting those printed. And because it hadn't been approved, we haven't moved forward with that yet.
But there will be a printed copy that anybody
Yes.
can, if I want a hard copy, I can have it in my home.
We will likely make the same number of students that are going to be incoming, our existing 8th graders going into 9th grade. Those are the ones that it's most important for, if you will.
Yes.
Because much like a college catalog, that's the one that you're kind of tied to for the 4 years or 3 years that you're in high school. So we'll make sure that we have those and then some additional ones.
I
Yes,
think
sir.
that's a great thing. Tell Mr. Autry we support.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Thank you for the question.
When you talk about a practicum in graphic design and illustration, can you give a little bit additional information of
And if,
define what that means to have a practicum in this? Because I know we've got graphic and design illustration classes.
and I hope I'm not misspeaking, I didn't specifically ask Mr. Lusk to attend today just because of our school closure and things of that nature. So if I don't give an adequate response, he'll text me and let me know, and I'll
Okay.
make sure I give you one. When I read these descriptions and conversations, it's almost as if it's an internship. So where it's more hands-on, if you will, and they're working directly with someone that's in the workforce versus, whereas right now they're working with their classroom teacher, they would be more hands-on with an outside party.
Yeah, that was my initial thought too, but then when I saw it's open to grades 10 through 12, I thought, well, maybe not.
It just depends on how soon in their career they begin some of these prerequisite courses. So it could be that we have a student that would be eligible for a practicum at grade 10. Where sometimes I often think about 11th and 12th graders, I associate that with doing more internships and things of that nature.
When you think of an internship, does that mean that they'll be off campus though?
Not necessarily. I'm just going to say it just depends on our agreement that we have, like with Tipton Ford, where theirs is, at Tipton Ford. So I think it's just going to depend on the specific program.
And one more question, sorry guys. I know one of the things I've been kind of told in the past is while we're offering these classes, and it's an offer, it doesn't mean that the classes will quote unquote make. How many students does it take in order for the class to actually?
It's a great question. So, when we were going over the front matter of the course catalog, it mentions in here about 10. And so it will have a good indication. Once we get all of our student selection sheets back, we'll be able to decipher, do we have enough to make the course? If maybe we don't, let's say if we have 10 or less, is it a section that we could offer in conjunction with another section so that it wouldn't be too disruptive? Does that make sense? Sometimes you might see like a French 3 and 4 together, whereas French 4 may only have 3 kids, and it's not disruptive to put them in with the French 3, because we want to honor the kids who are kind of on that trajectory. If they need to continue to get that 4th course, we want to make sure that we do that. So we loosely say 10, but then I'm going to also put the caveat of we look to see exactly what course it is, and then if it's pertinent to the student's 4-year program and/or their CTE coherent sequence.
Okay.
President Finch, I might add, there's a couple of things that we are doing to assist us with this. For instance, the middle school opportunity that we're providing for our kids to come in and let them know what is being offered at the high school. Something we have not done before. We usually go down to the middle school. What we're doing is bringing the middle schools up to the high school, get their interest up to figure out what we're going to do. A good example is our military science. We did not know the number of kids that were going to be coming into that program, but our commitment was to grow it. And so if we're growing a program, we know we're going to have some little adjustments as we're building the program. Fortunately for us, the military science became very popular with our freshmen, and we're over 20 kids in that program on its first year. And so we can see that growing. A lot of times also is putting it back onto the teachers. If you're going to offer a course, then we've got to sell that course. We've got to communicate that course. We've got to build an interest for that course. At the same time, we're evaluating programs and saying this program is not meet the criteria for the future, the workforce commission, the direction that we're going. So we've got to commit our direction when we're moving with our students in the course offerings they're having. So although it's 10, it might be smaller if it's a new course and we're wanting to build an interest. So we want to make sure that you're aware of that. And then what does it look like as the kids are coming up, and do we have that interest to continue to build that program? And you'll find that a lot with our CTE courses. But you'll also notice this on the top end of our classes. For instance, some of our kids are taking the advanced classes. We don't want to not get into business not offering it, but we want to make sure what are we doing to prepare our kids so we can get kids prepared to take that course, and encourage our kids to go off and take those upper level courses so that we're not having a class that doesn't make, and a student winds up needing that because they're wanting that as a credit, dual credit, or an opportunity to move forward. So it's multifaceted when you're looking at the numbers. So.
President Fitch, may I add one more thing?
Yes.
Mr. Lusk was able to give me some additional clarification. He did say yes from an internship opportunity standpoint, but also like school-based enterprise. So for example, a student-run print shop.
Okay. There you go.
Dr. Hill, our EMT students, do they have an opportunity to travel with the ambulances?
I do not know the answer to that. If you may give me a couple of...
Mr. Lusk, maybe he'll text us.
He
That
may
was,
text me
10
just a
years
second.
ago, that was a big issue.
The answer is yes.
It is, they have chance?
Yes, sir.
Because 10 years ago, there was so much opposition to the fact that they're too young to see tragic situations and all of that. Okay.
All right, one more question. I noticed at the beginning of the course catalog, it gave school start times and class times. Are we effectively adopting that when we approve this, or is that subject to change?
And that is subject to change, especially with the implications that we have with regards to COVID. So when we're looking at the handbook, it's not in specifically at the adopting, we need to double verify that, but that we're not adopting that the school start time and start and end time. More so because of possibly our kids and the relationship we have with workforce. What does it reasonably look like when the kids are moving back and forth as well? So.
Thank you for clarifying that.
And Mr. Nirman, to your point, the students that are in the EMT courses are required to complete clinical hours, so therefore the ride-alongs are
Okay.
Available.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any additional questions, thoughts, or comments on the proposed course catalog? All right, hearing none, we will move to item E, which is consideration of rescheduling the March 2022 agenda review meeting and regular board meeting. Superintendent Trujillo.
President Finch and Board, the spring break is March 7th through the 11th. Traditionally, March agenda review and the regular board meeting are rescheduled to the fourth week of the month, which would be Monday, March the 21st, and for the agenda review, and Thursday, March the 24th for the regular meeting. So that request is being submitted so that we can adjust.
Right. Will that work with everyone's schedule? All right. If you see any problems or anything, if you'll let us know before Thursday on that. All right. Let's see, now we're going to review the action portion of our agenda for next week. We're going to start there with item 6A, consideration of exhibits for local policy DFE, termination of employment, resignation. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, President Fitch, Board, Superintendent Trujillo. The board recalls you passed a update 118, which had a resolution that went along with policy DFE local, authorizing to accept resignations. Various to your administration recommended that the executive director of human resources.
I think his paperwork is touching his mic.
Flipping the page, that's what it is.
Mr. Martin, hold on just a moment. We're getting a lot of interference, and we think it might be something on your microphone on your side.
I think if he would hold the paper still.
Yeah, flipping the
Okay.
page.
All right?
Okay?
Yes, all right,
You can't move.
yes. Go ahead, please proceed.
All right. So last month, the board did approve second reading of update to 118, which included policy DFE local, which also came along with a resolution to designate 2 or other employees to be able to accept resignations aside from the superintendent. Administration recommended that those positions include the executive director of human resources and the director of human resources to be able to accept resignations in addition to the superintendent. We bring this back before the board. The board asked us to take a look at other avenues of reporting to the board those who have resigned, or either come up with some type of policy. After talking with council, it was recommended that we didn't put this request in a resolution, rather that we ask the board or entertain that it either be added to an administrative regulation or possibly board operating procedures. Dr. Trujillo, would you like to
Yes.
comment a little bit more on that?
Yes, and actually, I've continued to have dialogue with this, and so rather than, and we want to make sure that it adheres, first and foremost, I want to make sure it's clear, I'm not looking for another position at all. So when I say this, and I say for future leadership, I'm talking for the superintendent's role in this district, that it be written in policy and be able to be adjusted there. So Mr. Martin and myself will take the direction as to how will we report data to the board to inform the board about what trends look like, not just in staffing, but also in hiring and positions. But that's something that as a superintendent would present to the board, and a lot of that would occur, of course, in executive session. But I wanted to make sure that a little bit further out so that we know that this resolution is just looking at the fact of who is it that's also authorized by this board to receive resignations. And I didn't want to convolute that with or deplete its purpose from what the state is looking for by putting it in this, rather than adjusting and working with our attorney, working with Mr. Martin and our policy to figure out where that could live at. I pride myself for being very transparent. I pride myself with giving data and information, and sometimes a little too much, which is okay with me. However, sometime in the future, way in the future, if this board is working with another leader, we want to make sure that that leader understands that this board appreciates transparency, appreciates data, appreciates information. So that's something that I've had a conversation with the executive board about how that would be framed, and how we can come up with a policy that meets both the expectations of what the superintendent's role is and us all as of the board, especially in light of the time that we're in this day and age. We're talking about record numbers of resignations, record numbers of, in all different areas. I want the board to understand and know what that may look like and the trends that occur as we're moving forward with that. And I'm going to be fully transparent also with this. Sometimes there's other information that can be shared by the number of people that are leaving an organization. And that helps kind of dive into what do we need to do to address climate, culture, and all the things that are happening in a district. I didn't want the board to feel like, wait a minute, I thought there was a charge that was attached to this. There was, and still is. However, this is a resolution that addresses who is going to be coming in to accept resignations based on the board approval. I will be addressing this as a separate item and coming back to the board to address some formality of how that would look like as we're having this dialogue with the board. the leadership. And I can't count on the fact that I don't know who down the road may be sitting in the seat. I will be here for a while. I'm not going nowhere. I hope that we continue to develop that relationship and do the amazing things that we're doing for the district.
Excuse me, Dr. Truill. I think that came from Ms. Fitch, requested. Basically, as I understood, was the list of incoming and list of outgoing. So we have some idea who is still with us or who joined us. That's basically what it was. Outside of that, it's not my concern to know.
Absolutely. Any additional questions or comments? All right. Would you all be comfortable with this being moved to consent agenda?
Yes.
All right. We will do so. Item 6B, consideration of board action on request to advertise for bids on the McMichael Middle School restroom project. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, President Fitch. Page 219 of your board book, the McMichael Middle School football field restroom building was initially designed and bid under the WRL construction manager at-risk delivery method and included in the bid documents as an ad alternate. The restroom building and ad alternate was not approved at the time the GMP for the project was approved. Administration recommends the use of the competitive sealed proposal delivery method as defined in the Texas Government Code, Chapter 2269, for the McMichael Middle School restroom building at the existing football field complex. Basically, administration is requesting the board approve the delivery method that we may go out and look for proposals to build the restroom facility at the McMichael Middle School. We'll be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Mr. Martin, is it going to be, I guess, on the west side, am I correct?
On the backside back there, by the football field, Coach.
Yes, west side of the football field.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it's going to be one building or two separate buildings?
Munchton is one building with a ladies and a men's restroom.
Okay.
Mr. Martin, you've got Ralph and Army here present in the room, so they can assist you. I don't know if you can see them, but they're here as well, so they can actually give some details.
Thank you for that, and thank y'all for your patience today.
Yes.
I tell you what, Mr. LaRue, since you're here, I'm going to direct a question to you. I see on here this letter, it looks like this bid process would go through PBK, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. You know, the plans, I'm sorry, good afternoon, President, board members, Superintendent. It's a package deal. You get Army and Ralph. Yes, PBK had all the drawings and the plans already done up, so it didn't make sense to go elsewhere.
And on their bid, we didn't talk about this before, right? We didn't talk about the bathrooms before, or did we talk? I can't remember. So you're saying we're gonna go with PBK?
Only to get the project out to bid. We'll run it locally.
So this is just for bidding purposes?
Yes,
Yes.
as you may remember, when we did the initial bid process on the McMichael, when we lumped all those projects together, they bid this as an alternate, and at the time, the project was out of budget, and so the recommendation from administration at that time was to not accept the alternate for the restroom. The board's commitment all along in this process has been, we want to find a way to do this because that was part of our commitment to this community as part of the bond project.
Absolutely.
And I know we've remained very steadfast and united in wanting to deliver what we've
Promised.
promised. And I think We have to again compliment Dr. Trujillo and Ms. Barbrick on taking advantage of ESSER funds for some of the HVAC projects affiliated with the bond, which could potentially open up funding within the bond to complete this project. I say that not having any idea what this bid would come in at.
You know, I'm not even sure I want to venture a guess.
Yeah.
In this market.
Yeah.
So all intents and purposes, is PBK listed on here, on this document, only as a gatekeeper?
Originally, it had been priced out at around 200. And,
Okay.
and to the superintendent's question, yes, they're the gatekeeper to get this project out on the street, because it's their plans.
They've already drawn the plan, and so they own that plan, and your recommendation that it's most feasible to continue forward down that path.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if you can answer this, but do they get a percentage of whatever this bid is, does that pay back to them? Or are they already paid for all this?
They're on a fixed, let's let the architect answer that.
So I've had discussions with PBK about that particular issue. Given what the scope of that restroom is, they are fine with staying under their fee structure that they're under right now. In other words, there's no additional fees being given out because of this bidding process. The district and myself will manage the project through construction, okay? They will be responsible for certain submittal reviews after the bid, but otherwise they are not taking on any other fees other than what they've already gotten under the three projects. In other words, the contract that they're under right now.
So they're not accepting, there would be no other additional responsibility on their part.
Well, the responsibility is to get the drawings and specifications done, correct, and go watching it through bidding. And then there is a submittal process, for materials to review and approve. They are responsible for that. But the construction in the field, we will be keeping an eye on.
Supervise.
Yes.
So we prepaid this, right? That's the bottom line. We prepaid their services, and they have the
I don't know if I would put it as a prepaid. You have a contract with them for the three projects. It was an ad alternate at the time of award, and that was not accepted. So I don't know if I would characterize it as a prepayment. They're just not taking on any additional fee because of the change of delivery method here.
But we paid for those plans that they have, that they hope. We paid for that soft cost.
Yeah, I guess you could say that you did. It was designed, as when the GMP was done. It's actually been changed because the ad alternate at the time was way above the $200,000 budget that it represents now. And there was an attempt during the construction process to price it with WRL as the construction manager. It was reduced in scope to try to get that price back down. But I don't think anybody was comfortable trying to bring a $200,000 change order because of it at the time either. And so the district has basically put this off to the side and made a decision that we really felt like it was better to competitively bid this in the local community rather than just try to hand it over.
I appreciate that. Reverend, you had a comment I couldn't quite hear.
I was just going to say that I'm comfortable with the recommendation of the administration on this.
I'll say that too, Ralph. Mr. LaRue, I apologize. I trust you, and I've got faith in you and Mr. Curtis. And so if you guys are saying, or if you gentlemen are saying this is the best direction for us,
At this
You got my
juncture,
support.
it's the best way to go.
I'll take your word for it.
all right. Any other questions or comments on this item?
So be it.
Just curiosity, how many stalls are in there? Not that I'm gonna use, but
Three each
Yeah, I want to say 3 each.
on each side.
Do you think that's sufficient?
that is.
I think it's 3 more than what we have, isn't it?
Total of 6 more.
It is a project. I can remember going out there for middle school night games when my daughter was in middle school, and porta potties are just,
Still there.
Yeah. So this is just to complete the bid process or request or authorize the advertising of the bids. Are we comfortable putting this on consent agenda?
Yes.
All right, we will do so. That will take us to item 6C, consideration of NASD 2021-2022 COVID-19 mitigation protocols. Dr. Trujillo.
Well, we find ourselves in a different time period now, and wanted to make sure that the community know the decision that was made was not made lightly. We know that the tremendous impact that this would have on our parents and our community, and the stress that this would put on our families. However, based on the numbers that we were looking at, we had a significant amount of campuses that was well beyond 10% with regards to staff. I will tell you this, students, although any student having COVID is alarming, the students continued to trail the number of staff members that we were following with regards to the percentages that we have been provided by our families. For example, let me give you one particular number. At Nettie Marshall, 0.79% of our kids were identified to have COVID. However, 18.8% of the teachers at Nettie had been identified with COVID. Those numbers dictate attention. They dictate us to look at to see what we need to do, especially in light of every single day that I shared numbers with the board and we shared it with the community. The numbers were coming up, they were going up. The other thing to let you know, when you go out and sit at a bus stop and you have dinner with your wife in the parking lot or next to the curb, just to wait for a bus to come by. And when you see a group of kids coming out of the bus, like I did, at 6:15, and they're elementary kids, the sun's disappearing, it makes it a little more powerful to say that these kids are coming home a little later than normal. That means they're not used to seeing the traffic flow, and they're out there playing around just like they do when the bus stops at 4:15, or people are getting off of work and they're not used to seeing kids that are coming off of a bus stop, and they drive just a little more in a hurry to make it home. And so sitting there and watching transportation or having conversations with their cafeteria worker, for instance at Mike Moses or McMichael, and they have 7 employees that are there and 4 of them are out because of COVID, the stresses of figuring out how are we going to feed the kids when they come in and walk through the lines dictated us to make a decision to say, let's get on top of this and not wait till the wheels come off the bus. They were already wiggling. Let's just stop the bus and get on top of it completely. So I want to applaud my team and the administration and my nurses. My lead nurse, Kelly's been dynamic with this and bringing our folks together to arrive to the decision, and then bringing this to the board and having President Finch. We had nonstop conversations about what direction we were looking for, and wanted to make sure that the community knew that this was not taken lightly in making this decision. Worst case scenario, they're saying that by the 19th we should be over this little hump. I don't know. I'm not an actuarian when it comes to COVID, and I don't know anybody that can predict it, but if that is the number indeed, if they're saying the date, then we should be in a good situation coming on the backside of this, and we can only hope and pray that that's what it is. The last night,
Dr. Trio,
Yes.
before you move on to that, would you address, I know I've had a few parents, particularly at the high school, reach out to me concerned about what was going to happen, because unfortunately this hits right at that first semester break. For kind of public consumption, can you discuss what action's going to be, what is the district looking at in regard to those end of course testing and midterm testing?
absolutely. Thank you for the question, President Finch, and those are questions we were having as a committee. A lot of times what dictates that is when is the report card's going to come out, and it puts a kind of bookend to the 6 weeks. So instead, what we've done is we've adjusted that. That's going to adjust the 6 weeks. The report card dates have been pushed out. In the meeting with us was our high school principal. This was not being a decision being made without our high school principal in the room, because we knew they had implications with semester exams. And so he was in agreement that we just make adjustments to the calendar with regards to the report cards, which gives enough room and time for the work to measure student success and be able to report that on a report card, which makes the next 6 weeks just a little bit shorter as we're adjusting it. So our parents are duly right to be concerned, but we want to make sure that hopefully we thought about everything. We probably missed something, but I'm going to tell you, when you sit in a room with some amazing individuals that bring a lot of expertise to the table, rather than myself or just a small group of people, you get to come up with a wonderful idea, and that's what we arrived with. I just want to stress, I know this is an impact to our families, and regrettably, this is something we did not want to happen, but it did have to happen. And based on watching the news and everything else, we're not alone. And this was not a race to be first. Trust me, we were not wanting to be first to do this. I had already been in conversations with the superintendent in Central Heights, and Douglas, and Henderson, and Lufkin, and several others. Matter of fact, as I speak today, the Region Service Center is pulling all of the superintendents together and having a meeting. What's funny is I requested this. I requested this meeting, that I would love to have an opportunity to visit with superintendents. But that goes to say, I don't need to be in that call, even though I requested it. I do have some folks that I've pointed out, and they're sitting in those calls to make sure we can figure out what other districts are doing to address this. But that hopefully answers the question
Yes,
that our
it
parents
does.
may
Thank
have.
you.
Yes, now. Just so you're aware, we have, as of Wednesday, when we were letting out, we had 85 positive staff cases that day. However, that day when I was walking around, we were getting positive cases as we speak. And even today, as we're here, we have folks that are reporting positive cases. So even though we're not in school, COVID hasn't taken a break. It's still hitting several of our staff members. Matter of fact, you take a look at this board, there's reasons why we don't have the full board. There's also reasons why we don't have individuals doing presentations here. It's reaching out and touching a lot of lives. So gives you a number there. What's exciting though is when this board made the decision to create a drive-through site to test our families, we didn't know what and how much advantage that would be to our community of teachers and staff. Let me give you some numbers so you'll know. The first week coming back from the holidays, 164 individuals drove through Margie Chumley's parking lot. 164 to get tested. The second week, we had 218 individuals drive through the Margie Chumley parking lot. Those are our teachers and families that wanted to know where is a reliable place that I can go and sit and be tested, and gives you some good details. The total drive up since the break has been 382 families and staff. District-wide, just so you'll know, the testing is much greater because some folks have been tested on site. They were tested on campus by the school nurse, or they self-tested and then they reported to us. The number we do have is about 690 tests that were there, approximately 440 staff, 250 students. Of those, so you'll see positive tests, that came, and this is what is telltale. When you have that many tests, how many positive come out of it? Because if all it takes is one, and we had 129 positive tests that were resulted from them coming by and getting the test. And that's, we don't know. Some folks are testing positive, negative, but then if they go take another test, on the third time, they may wind up being positive. So it's a little bit different with the variant as we're going through here. We have, one of the things that helped us to adjust this is we were really going through our resources of tests. Tests are running short across the country. We've been trying to stay on top of ordering tests to make sure we have them on hand. We right now, and the shutdown's allowing us to get a shipment in to really replenish. We are sitting at approximately 500 tests. A while ago when I gave you the numbers of how many tests we have given, we gave 382. So this allows us some time to get some tests in. Matter of fact, when those tests, we saw these numbers were depleting, we went ahead and ordered another 1,000 to make sure that we get plenty of tests for our folks. The vendors are saying 1 to 2 weeks for delivery. We'll see if we get them in. We have a good relationship with our neighboring school district, so if we get push come to shove, I'll get in my truck. I'm sure Michael can get, Mr. Martin can get in his truck. Dr. Hill, we can get in, she can get in that nice little car that she drives. We could drive to the communities and pick up some tests if we need to get them for our families. So last night, I was fortunate enough to go to Mike Moses. We were shut down, but I went to Mike Moses and saw a cafeteria full of folks getting vaccines. Wound up with 68 individuals that came in and get a vaccine. What was exciting was to see our SFA nursing program sitting in the room administering the test, and there was Chief. Our fire chief has been, my gosh, he's been a godsend with it. Every time we reached out, he's come out and partnered with us with the SFA and with the school district. So kudos to the city and our very own fire chief. He was there from beginning to end, and our SFA nursing program, wonderful group of nurses that were there, and OJT, on-the-job training. They're there providing the information for our families. And then what was exciting, Mr. Montoya, is when you see these future nurses that are bilingual, and they're sitting there talking with their families, and they're feeling a little comfortable because they're also talking to them in their native language. It's pretty amazing to see that. Community resources, just to go out to the community, let them know. Testing is available right now Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Embry Health and Outdoor location at the XLER parking building. It's located at 1420 North Street. The city vaccine clinic is going on each Friday. Matter of fact, there's one going on today, and it's over at the Recreation Center, 1112 North Street. The community vaccines, just so you're aware, is at the library, and we're excited about the opportunities that our families can have. They're providing the Moderna and the Pfizer. They'll do the booster, first vaccine if you need to have that. And so we're excited about the work that's being done, the cautionary steps that we're taking to evaluate everything. We're staying attuned to the commissioner. He's held a call with superintendents these last 2 weeks. We had a call with him yesterday, to give us the update as far as what mitigation and guidance are we getting from the state with regards to COVID, this epidemic that seems to be sticking around a little bit longer. So that is my report, President Finch. Any questions?
Thank you.
Yes.
I just have a comment. I don't know that the people that listening understand that every day, every single day, late in the day, we get numbers from every school, every student, every teacher, everything. And this is really important for us to know. And so when it happened, there was no surprises to us, but it's surprises to other people. But today I was in Tractor Supply walking out, and I came in, no, it was Atwood's, not Tractor Supply. And it was an esteemed faculty member of NHS. We discussed about this, he said, you know, this was good timing because it came before the breaking point. And I think that's real critical. We were proactive not waiting until it was just, we have to do it. We said, this is the time. And I think that shows the skill that you have and the people you have under you, like Mr. Tarvin and all the people collecting this data. To me, being a doctor, I can never have too much data. I'm like you. So I think this is really, really good, and the report you gave today is really good, and I think that the people that hear this need to share it with their friends, that this is not something that's done lightly. This is something that's done with intelligence, integrity, and the thought what's best for everyone. We need to have all of our transportation people. The fact that we have smart tag, they have to check off on their bus before they start. No, I don't have COVID. That means they're not, infecting a whole bus full of kids. So we have a lot of things that are built into our system that people don't think about. And sometimes even we don't think about that. But you're thinking about that, and we do appreciate that. So sorry it's a diatribe, but that's my deal. But I think it's really good what we're doing, and I'm glad we have such a good team that includes our our nurses and all the people that help our nurses. And now all the people that are feeding. That's another thing. I go by and I see those cars, and I go, oh, they're by the cafeteria. They're giving out food. I think that's wonderful. So maybe we need to tell about the food so that if people can share that with other people.
Absolutely, absolutely. And on that note, just so you're aware, we did have, how many folks did we have at Mike Moses yesterday?
97.
97. So 97 families. Our commitment was, if we shut down, we have an obligation to our families because it's 3 days, and sometimes our kids are looking forward to that meal at school. So we made a commitment to open the feeding site, and Mike Moses had it. 97 families that we would not have otherwise had if we did not open that. So we want to make sure that the community knows we're thinking of everything we can. We're going to miss something, but we're human, and we want to make sure. So if there's something out there that the community is thinking about that we missed, please let us know. It wasn't intentional. We can make sure that we'll make ourselves better with that. I might add also, because Dr. Roman brings up a good point, and it will happen before the next board meeting, that we don't want to extend the school year. So just so the community understands, when we're missing these 3 days of school, these 3 days of schools are being missed, but every one of our employees continue to meet the obligations of their contract, and we don't have to look at adding days. We had some minutes that were already in there that allowed us this liberty to go in here and take these days, but we're going to run out of these days as we move through the year. So we will be having conversation when we get the team back together about possibly adding back. We took away the extra time early in the year because that was our promise to our teachers and our community. However, because we've depleted this, there is a possibility that we will be extending the day by 15 minutes, which means 5 minutes in the morning, 10 in the afternoon. Those 15 minutes add up and can give us some additional time. It's important for the community and important for our teachers to know this, because if we don't, then we have to make up those days at the end of the year. That means we come back to school in June. And so we don't want to do that. We want to make a commitment to the graduation date and the time and all that is in place, and not have to make any moves, and we're not going to. I just want to make sure to be proactive as we're moving forward. So there may be a possibility, you'll see that we'll add about 15 minutes, but we've had conversation with transportation and all the services and be able to meet that. But great question with cafeteria and the information that we had. 90 some odd families were able to eat yesterday. So
103 today.
how many?
103.
103 kids today. So thank you. That's awesome.
Yes, absolutely. Any additional questions or comments on this item? All right, hearing none, we will move to the next item on our agenda, item 7. The board will now conduct an executive closed session to discuss the items posted on our agenda pursuant to the following provisions of the Texas Open Meetings Act and as allowed by Texas Government Code sections 551.071, 551.074, and 551.129. No voting will take place in the closed meeting. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of discussions in closed session will take place after the board reconvenes in open session. It is now 2:30 p.m.
my desk.
We good? The board is now reconvening into open session at 2:59 PM. Are there any requests for future agenda items? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
I move that we adjourn.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mrs. Winslow. Do we have a second? A second by
We'll
Reverend
think about
Irving. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. We will see you Thursday.
That was quite a long delay before you answered.